talented or smart, and my...
He told me enough.
No, I.
Here's Chuck.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review, and this movie review is going to be for a 1982 horror film directed by George A. Romero, and it's actually not just any horror film. It's an anthology horror film, directed by George A. Romero and helped by Stephen King. And this review is going to be for none other than 1982's Creepshow, directed by George A. Romero and Stephen King. What's the plot of this? Well, 5 tales of terror are presented. The first deals with a demented old man returning from the grave to get the Father's Day cake for his murdering daughter never gave him. The second is about a not-too-brave farmer discovering a meteor that turns everything into plant life. The third is about a vengeful husband burying his wife and her lover up to their necks on the beach. The fourth is about a creature that resides in a crate under the steps of a college. The final story is about an ultra-rich businessman who gets his comeuppance from cockroaches. Yeah. So, how is this well made? Well, the segments Father's Day, Something to Tide You Over, They're Creeping Up on You are original stories by King written for the film. The Lonesome Death of Georgie Vernon is based on King's short story Weeds, and The Crate is based on the short story of the same name. In keeping with Romero's tradition of filming in and around the Pittsburgh area, most of the film was shot in an empty all-girls school located outside Greensburg, Pennsylvania. The school was converted into a film studio, and episodes of Lonesome Death of Georgie Vernon and They're Creeping Up on You, as well as the prologue and epilogue, were filmed in there entirely at the former school. Filming took place at the Greensburg location throughout 1981. And several additional locations are used for filming, like the Crate. Mostly interior exterior shots of the university sequences were filmed at Carnegie Mellon University, Romero's at Carnegie Mellon University on Loomis, with Margaret Morrison Hall serving as the Amberson Hall. The backyard party was filmed in Romero's own backyard at his former residence in Amberson Avenue in Shadyside, Pennsylvania. Father's Day was filmed on location at a mansion in Pittsburgh suburb at Fox Chapel, Pennsylvania. And Something to Tide You Over was filmed on location at Island Beach State Park, Berkeley Township, New Jersey. Then in a 2015 interview with the AV Club, Tim Danson explained the brief shot of his character drowning underwater, that they made a little aquarium tank, they got in a wetsuit and climbed in, and somebody would reach down with an oxygen tank level really thinny, and he'd breathe. And they'd take that out, and there was a yoke made out of, that he didn't know, like wooden fake sand maybe. So it looked like his head was buried in the sand underwater. And then Creepshow is, of course, a homage to the... Alright. Creepshow is a homage to the EC horror comics in the 1950s, like Tales from the Crypt, The Ball of Horror, and The Haunt of Fear, in order for the film to give viewers a comic book feel. Romero hired long-term effects specialist Tom Savini to replicate comic-like effects. So after the film was shot and marketed, upon release, Creepshow earned $21 million worldwide at the box office in the United States, and was followed by 2 sequels, 1987, Creepshow 2, directed by the film's cinematographer Michael Garnick and written by Romero based on stories by King, which ended up being alright. And then he had a second sequel, Creepshow 3, being released in 2006 without either Romero or King's involvement, and being an absolute shitty dumpster fire that we don't talk of. Now, and it received mixed to positive reviews from critics, but received positive reviews from horror fans. As for my reaction, I have to say, this is by far the best anthology horror film ever made. Creepshow 1982 is a horror fan's dream come true. 2 of the masters in their respective fields joining forces to collaborate on a movie. Several tales filmed in an anthology style based upon the EC comics that the 2 enjoyed reading in their youths. With Stephen King writing and George A. Romero directing, plus Tom Savini creating the gory special effects, how can you go wrong? You can't just... You just can't, and the aforementioned duo delivers the goods. The story begins as a young kid is being punished by his overbearing and brutish father for reading trashy filth, and is punished. During the night, the tossed-out comic book comes to life and plays out all the stories in comic book form, with the Creepshow Gaul leading the way. black comedy has never been this funnier. Like, all the stories are excellent and well directed. The set pieces are very well designed and brilliantly executed. You have to love the lighting schemes. The cast is a mixture of new actors and classic ones. George A. Romero stated he finally got to work with Fritz Weaver and Hal Holbrook and E.G. Marshall, Leslie Nielsen, Adrienne Barbeau, Ted Danson, and Ed Harris co-star as well. A couple of Romero regulars such as his wife Christine, Tom Savini, and who can't forget Stephen King as Jordy Verrill. Each of the stories displayed in this movie are a little bit corny to a certain extent, but they are still well done and quite amusing. There's a very good cast too, like Ed Harris, Leslie Nielsen, Ted Danson, Adrienne Barbeau, and E.G. Marshall, whom all give good performances in the movie. The whole movie is tied with the classic EC comics from the 1950s, each story as if it were from a comic book, and I thought the whole comic aspect was pretty unique, and I like the stories in the film. And the Crate is by far the best of them all. The one with Leslie Nielsen is my runner-up for second place. Oh wait, actually the Cockroaches is the one up for second place. In fact, here's how I rank the segments. In Father's Day, undead father comes back from the grave as a zombie, expecting to eat his cake, 6 out of 10. The lonesome death of Jordy Verrill, solitary farmer Stevie King playing Verrill, finds a meteor and is affected with strange weeds growing on his body, 7 out of 10. In Something to Tide You Over, Harry is forced by the vengeful Leslie Nielsen to go to Comfort Point Beach and to bury himself in the sand with Richard's former wife Becky. He's buried in the sand and in the high tide, and their heads are submerged for the sadistic pleasure of Richard. Next night, the zombie lovers pay him a visit, 6 out of 10. In The Crate, a janitor finds a crate hidden under the stairs, and inside is a creature that devours the janitor and another scientist. When Henry finds out about this, he thinks he can use this monster to eat his mean wife Wilma. One of the best and funny as hell, 9 out of 10. And they're creeping up on you. Upson Pratt lives in an expensive bug-proof penthouse and is awful to his workers. There's a blackout and his nice apartment is infested by roaches, driving him to a horrible end, 8 out of 10. For those unfamiliar with the comics of EC and their competitors, their stories were chock full of dark comedy and twist endings intruded with a sense of poetic justice. King's stories are a pretty good approximation of this approach, and as a result, the movie has a lighter feel than Carrie or The Shining. To be sure, as with any anthology film, the stories aren't uniform or quality, but even the worst of them aren't all that bad. Just a bit side or unpredictable. And horror veteran George Romero obviously had an affinity for this type of material, as is illustrated by some of the directional choices that took their cues from the comics, and he probably could have done without some of the more garnished visual effects. I can't really complain about this direction overall. The gruesome special effects by Tom Savini are, of course, another crucial element to the movie's look. Director George A. Romero does a good job here, and he was still capable of turning in a good film, and I love the comic look and feel of the Creepshow as it suits the material perfectly. I love the color schemes and effects when he flicks between scenes like someone is turning the page of a comic. Certain scenes are accompanied by comic style borders and have boxes which contain 3 or 4 different images at once, and the next day type next. This is as close to a comic book as you can get, I suppose, but there's some decent gore here. There are bullets through heads, bit necks, slashed faces, decapitated heads. That's until cockroaches literally explode from someone's chest, and there's plenty of blood splatter and other makeup effects. The teaming of King and Romero make for a great, fun, comic-style horror film. Very silly in some aspects, and definitely not a serious horror film. It still manages to be somewhat frightening and fun at the same time. However, when it comes to the film, is there any nitpicks I would have with the movie? Well, yeah. Every good film's gonna have some nitpicks. And here we go. The nitpicks I have is, well, we don't really have much of a wraparound except for the beginning and ending of the film. I kind of wanted to see more of the kid that got his comic taken away, and him interacting with the Creepshow mascot between some segments. The buried in sand segment is kind of just too much. But a segment involving nasty wife Adrienne Barbeau harassing his strange husband Hal Holbrook is hilarious as well as creepy, with Barbeau getting some deliciously nasty lines, yet is a big surprise that would send the most formidable of man and woman to a mental institution. And Ted Danson finds that funny man Leslie Nielsen is a crackhead about being called Shirley when he's confronted by Nielsen for seducing his wife. And once again, there is a last laugh, with the twist both spooky and gut-busting. You can't expect all the segments to be great, but the deliberate grossness is kept to a minimum. The tongue-in-cheek, however, is top-notch, reminding us of the best horror psychological, not physical. And I really like the ending, too, where the kid gets his revenge on the jerk dad, makes a voodoo doll of him, stabs him with this needle, and like in the intro, We then cut back to comic form with the Creepshow mascot holding a Creepshow comic on that same image of the kid, and he laughs as the screen turns to black. So I like that. We even get some nice 2D animation in here as well during some moments, and yeah, I really like that. So, despite those nitpicks, in the end, Creepshow is a perfect example of an anthology horror film done the right way, and I wish more tried to be like it. So, for my final recommendation, I would highly recommend anyone watching and buying this for any horror anthology or Romero fan. For sure, it's definitely worth buying and adding to your shelf for sure. It's an example of an anthology horror film done right, and I recommend it to just about anybody who's a George A. Romero fan. But if you're expecting something like zombies, you're probably not going to get something like Dawn of the Dead or Night of the Living Dead, but this is definitely a refreshing, very refreshing move on and break from zombies for a while and doing something a little more creative. Especially working with legend Stephen King of all people. Anyway, that's it for my review of Creepshow. If you're wondering how I'm going to rank Creepshow, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you love horror anthologies and works from George A. Romero, then I would heavily recommend watching this movie and buying it and adding it to your collection for sure. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank Creepshow 1982, I'm going to give Creepshow 1982 a 9 out of 10. There we go. That wraps up my review for Creepshow. It's good getting to review this horror anthology. I will check out the sequels eventually. Creepshow 2. I guess I can hope. I guess I have some kind of enjoyment for. Creepshow 3 I'm definitely would never be excited to check out, because I've heard it's awful. Until then, guys, that'll be it for this review. Thank y'all for watching. If you like this and want to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.